China is pretty much up in the top signals intelligence collection operations together with the Five Eyes partners, using a host of proxy organizations. The scope of collection activity, it's everything from graduate students in universities, visiting business delegations, stealing population level data sets. TikTok, part of China's cognitive operations. China, the rising power, quite happy to utilize, exploit, and to benefit from such chaos. China sees this as something that distracts the United States and its Western allies to focus on the Indo-Pacific. China's intelligence services have at their disposal. They seem willing to pay people very considerable sums of money.
Is there a specific case you have in mind? You're watching The Times of India. I'm Aditi Prasad, and with me is Nigel Inkster. He is the Senior Advisor for China at the International Institute for Strategic Studies and boasts a almost 3-decade-long career with the British Secret Intelligence Service, which is MI6. At present, would you call China having the largest spy operations amongst all countries in the world?
Well, that's a difficult thing to judge because, of course, you have organizations like the U.S. National Security Agency that engages in very extensive signals intelligence collection operations together with the Five Eyes partners. But I would say China is pretty much up there in the top tier. And I think the thing about China more than anything else is the sheer volume of activity that we're seeing both in the cyber domain and increasingly in terms of human intelligence operations of various kinds. So yes, and I think the issue for a lot of security and intelligence services around the world is precisely the issue of volume, the sheer numbers of people involved, the sheer quantity of operations that are taking place.
What is the various covert methods by which China, particularly, since that's your area of expertise per se, that China is using for spying?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that this goes beyond simply China's formally designated intelligence agencies, the Ministry of State Security, which is the main civilian agency, and the Military Intelligence Agency. It goes beyond that, and it is best conceived as a kind of all-of-nation undertaking. We have a number of organizations apart from the intelligence services that are engaged in a range of activities that range from overt to highly covert, all designed to collect intelligence, to exercise influence in China's favor. An obvious example being the United Front Work Department that under Xi Jinping has been given very substantial resources and a wide-ranging remit. So it's more than just the intelligence agencies per se. We also see China's intelligence agencies and other entities using a host of proxy organizations, essentially private hacking and private security groups that operate on behalf of the state. So it's a very wide-ranging effort involving multiple actors, not just the intelligence agencies.
The US Congress has also just cracked down on TikTok, which has admitted that some of its employees had been spying on American journalists. How do you view this? But they've not banned TikTok yet. What is the danger of TikTok?
Well, I mean, obviously there are problems with TikTok, precisely the ones that you've highlighted. But I think in the overall scheme of things, we have to look at TikTok as something that represents a slow burn, long-term issue rather than something that delivers immediate strategic impact or benefit to China. TikTok, I think, is best seen as part of China's engagement in what we at IISS are terming cognitive operations, operations which are designed to shape and influence the thinking of target populations, particularly in the West. So yes, it is a problem, but probably the most pressing, not the most pressing problem that China poses.
What is your understanding of how the Chinese espionage is different from the kind of espionage that carries out in the rest of the world?
Well, as I said, I think one of the key things is the sheer volume, the numbers of individuals involved, the scope of collection activity. It's everything from graduate students in universities, visiting business delegations. We've seen, for example, this case in New York recently, where a senior aide of the New York governor has allegedly been working in various ways to promote China's agenda in the New York region. We're seeing activities designed to monitor, surveil, and coerce dissidents overseas, people who publicly disagree with China's policies. And we're seeing pervasive cyber espionage operations. What strikes me is that at the moment it's very much a case of quantity over quality. If you look at individual Chinese espionage operations, they're a curious combination of sophistication and clumsiness. And it seems to me pretty clear that China is increasingly unconcerned about being caught out in engaging in espionage operations. They really don't care anymore. They're just going to do it. And that makes it much more difficult to deal with. Most governments, when they engage in espionage, are concerned to minimize risks, engage in damage limitation. China doesn't seem to be so concerned about that. The other thing I would say is it's quite striking how much money China's intelligence services have at their disposal. They seem willing to pay people very considerable sums of money for what on the face of it doesn't look that like very consequential intelligence, something that no Western intelligence agency would be able to do, because of course, they have to be accountable for the limited resources at their disposal.
Is there a specific case you have in mind where you've heard of China paying people what amount for what non-inconsequential information, so to speak?
Well, I mean, I think if we look at this most recent case involving the official in the New York governor's office, she herself didn't seem to get all that much, but her husband appears allegedly to have been involved in this exercise, and here we see him being paid very substantial sums of money, with living in a $4 million house, driving a top of the range sports car, all sorts of other benefits, which to my mind seem disproportionate to any likely benefit that would have been derived. In this case, a proven case of espionage.
Chinese state is, then there's no, everything comes from the top, right? So there's no accountability per se that they would have to a particular body or a regulatory authority or any such thing. But that makes it that much more dangerous, right? All kinds of information, copious amounts of data they're filtering. Clearly, it's a mix of the old school and the new school.
Yes, I mean, one area that we're seeing China doing something exceptional that nobody else is doing is stealing population-level data sets without any immediately obvious purpose, but in order to build up a stock of information for a variety of purposes, for espionage, but also for cognition warfare, looking at what messages might likely resonate with a target population, also for biomedical research purposes, all sorts of reasons, just gathering these huge volumes of data, so to speak, against the day.
In terms of the new world order that's shaping up, the war in the Middle East, there is the Russia-Ukraine war. The West and the US in particular, and the UK in particular, completely preoccupied with that. What kind of a playing field does that leave open for China?
A very interesting situation, what Professor Joseph Nye of the Harvard Kennedy School has called the Kindleberger trap. Essentially, we're in a situation where the incumbent hegemon, the United States, is less able to exercise effective hegemony. China, so to speak, the rising power, shows no interest or aspiration in exercising that kind of hegemony. So we have something of a power vacuum, which is enabling a lot of mid-range actors to do things that in the past they might have not felt empowered or able to do. China is not seeking to promote chaos or instability in the world, but it is quite happy to utilize, exploit, and to benefit from such chaos as and when it manifests itself. And I think the Ukraine war, that is what it is an example of that. I think on a balance of probabilities, China would rather Putin had not invaded Ukraine. But now that they have, China sees this as something that distracts the United States and its Western allies, limits their ability to focus on the Indo-Pacific region, empowers an important ally in efforts to reshape the global order, and is therefore something that can be exploited. In other areas, China, the Middle East, China is now seeking to promote itself as a peacemaker. We saw earlier this year China brokering a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, though in practice China didn't really do very much. That was pretty much coming of its own accord anyway, and hasn't really done much to reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. But China, I think, is looking at the world opportunistically. How are events that are shaping up capable of being utilized to promote our interests and long-term objectives?